The first time I noticed something off, it wasn't the kind of epiphany you read about in detective novels. No smoking gun, no lipstick on a collar. It was a feeling. A faint hum of unease that started during one of my Friday night sparring sessions at the gym. Amanda had shown up unannounced. She wasn't exactly a stranger to my workouts. She'd swung by a few times over the years, mostly when she wanted to guilt-trip me into skipping a session to catch dinner or a Netflix marathon. But this time was different. She wasn't there to drag me out of the ring. She was there to watch. Her eyes weren't on me, though. They were glued to Marcus Steele, my coach. Marcus wasn't an easy guy to ignore. Standing at 6'2" with the kind of physique you'd expect from a man who'd spent more time in a ring than in his own bed, he had this presence about him. Charisma oozed from him like sweat. Women in the gym, hell, even the ones outside of it, gravitated toward him like he was the sun. Amanda, apparently, wasn't immune. I caught her laughing at something Marcus said as I wrapped my hands with tape. She tossed her hair back the way she did when she was tipsy at a party, leaning just a little too close. I told myself it was nothing. Amanda was naturally outgoing, the kind of woman who'd chat up the barista about his favorite drink or ask strangers for dog-walking recommendations. It was just her personality. But still, a bitter taste crept into my mouth every time I saw her glance his way. When we got home, I tried to shake it off. We ate a late dinner, leftover lasagna, while Amanda scrolled through Instagram. "You seemed pretty chummy with Marcus tonight," I said, keeping my tone casual. She didn't even look up. "He's just friendly." "Relax, Ethan." The way she said it was almost too easy. Too rehearsed. "You don't usually come to the gym just to hang out." "Yeah, well, I wanted to see what all the hype was about." "You're always going on about your training this and sparring that." She mimicked my voice, smirking, but there was something defensive in her tone. I let it go. Maybe I was being paranoid. A week passed, and Amanda started showing up more often. At first, it was once a week. Then twice. She brought smoothies for everyone, a gesture that Marcus found especially charming. "You've got yourself a real one, Ethan," he said, slapping me on the back one day as Amanda handed him a green concoction in a tall plastic cup. "Yeah," I replied, forcing a smile. The unease was no longer a hum, it was a steady drumbeat in my chest. The tipping point came on a Thursday evening. Amanda had left her gym bag in the car, and I offered to grab it for her while she chatted with one of the other boxers. When I opened the bag, a slip of paper fell out. It was a receipt from an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place we hadn't been to in months. The date on the receipt was 2 weeks ago, a night she told me she was having a girls' night. The name on the receipt wasn't hers. It was Marcus Steele's. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. Instead, I started watching. Listening. When she left the room, I unlocked her phone and scanned through her messages. Nothing obvious there. But she'd been smart, or careful. The thought of Amanda, my Amanda, hiding something from me made my stomach churn. She still laughed at my jokes, still kissed me goodnight, still held my hand in the car. But it all felt like theater, a carefully choreographed dance to keep me from noticing the cracks in the facade. One night, I stayed late at the gym after Amanda had already gone home. Marcus and I were the last ones there, cleaning up after a long day of training. "She's been coming around a lot lately," Marcus said, his tone light. I froze for a split second before responding. "Yeah, I guess so. She's good company." "You're a lucky guy." There was nothing overtly sinister in his words, but the way he said it, like he was testing me, set my nerves on edge. By the time I got home, Amanda was already in bed, her back to me. I stared at her for a long time, watching the rise and fall of her breath. Was I imagining it? Or had Marcus and Amanda already crossed a line I couldn't come back from? The next day, I called Jason. You think she's cheating on you? He asked bluntly. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Jason sighed. Look, man, you can't just go accusing her without proof. You've gotta play it smart. Gather evidence. See what's really going on before you blow up your marriage. It was good advice. I just didn't know if I had the patience for it. The next morning, Amanda kissed me goodbye before heading off to work. I'm meeting Sophie for lunch, she said casually. Have fun, I replied, watching her closely. As soon as she was out the door, I grabbed my keys and followed her. She wasn't meeting Sophie. She was heading straight to Marcus's apartment. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, watching the apartment building from the safety of tinted windows. My mind churned with every scenario imaginable. Was she meeting Marcus for training? A casual coffee? Or was this exactly what I thought it was, something far worse? It was a modest building, not the kind of place you'd expect from someone like Marcus, who drove a brand new BMW and wore sneakers that cost more than my monthly rent back in college. I hadn't noticed Amanda go in, but her car was parked out front, so there was no denying it. I wanted to march in and confront them both right then and there, but something Jason had said the day before echoed in my mind, you can't just go accusing her without proof. So I waited. When Amanda finally emerged 2 hours later, she looked completely at ease. She wasn't rushing or checking over her shoulder. She walked to her car, phone in hand, and even paused to type something, her lips curling into a faint smile. My chest tightened. I followed her back home, keeping my distance. She didn't notice me, she never even glanced in the rearview mirror. When we both pulled into the driveway, I gave her a few minutes before heading inside. Hey, she called from the kitchen as I walked through the door. You're home early. Yeah, slow day at work, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Amanda was cutting vegetables for dinner, humming softly to herself. She looked so normal. How was lunch with Sophie? I asked, leaning casually against the counter. It was fine. Nothing exciting, she said without missing a beat. Her lie was so smooth, so effortless, that for a moment, I almost doubted myself. Almost. The next day, I decided it was time to take things a step further. At lunch, I swung by a tech store and picked up a couple of small recording devices. I'd never done anything like this before, and the thought of spying on Amanda made my stomach churn. But I couldn't shake the image of her leaving Marcus's apartment, her face calm and unreadable. I planted one device in her car, tucked beneath the driver's seat. The other I hid in our bedroom, nestled between the slats of the headboard. If there was something going on, I needed to know. The first few days were uneventful. I listened to hours of mundane conversations, Amanda talking to coworkers on her commute, humming along to pop songs, even complaining about the traffic. But on the 5th day, I struck gold. Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything? The voice was unmistakably Marcus's. Deep, smooth, with that faint drawl that women seem to find irresistible. No, Amanda said. He's completely clueless. My chest tightened as I replayed the snippet over and over. The way she laughed at the end, light and carefree, felt like a punch to the gut. I stayed up all night listening to the recording. Most of it was innocuous, a mix of small talk and flirtation, but there was no denying the undercurrent of intimacy between them. The next morning, I called Jason again. You're not going to like what I found, I said, my voice hollow. All right, hit me, he replied, bracing himself. I played the recording over the phone. When it ended, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Yeah, that's bad, Jason finally said. What the hell am I supposed to do? You need more than just this. If you confront her now, she'll deny it and spin it around on you. Trust me, man, I've seen it happen. Jason had been through a nasty divorce 2 years ago. His ex-wife had cheated on him with a coworker, and the fallout had left him bitter and cynical. "What do you suggest?" I asked, desperate for answers. "Follow the money," he said. "If they're meeting up, they're spending money. Check her credit card statements, her Venmo transactions. Anything that doesn't add up." That evening, while Amanda was in the shower, I went through her purse. My hands trembled as I rifled through her wallet, pulling out receipts and scrunched-up napkins. It didn't take long to find something suspicious. A hotel receipt from 3 weeks ago. One night at a boutique hotel downtown. The name on the receipt? Marcus Steele. My heart was pounding by the time Amanda came out of the bathroom, her hair wrapped in a towel. "Everything okay?" she asked, giving me a curious look. "Yeah, just tired," I muttered, shoving the receipts into my pocket. She smiled and kissed me on the cheek before heading to the bedroom. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty kitchen, wondering how the hell I was going to get through this. Over the next few days, I pieced together more evidence. A series of Venmo transactions to Marcus labeled as training, even though I knew she wasn't taking any lessons. Another receipt from the same Italian restaurant. By the time I was done, I had a stack of proof that left no room for doubt. The final straw came during a sparring session at the gym. Marcus was in the ring with another boxer, shouting instructions as they traded punches. Amanda was there too, sitting on the bleachers with a couple of the other gym wives. I watched as Marcus glanced her way, his gaze lingering just a second too long. Amanda caught his eye and smiled, a small, private smile that sent a surge of anger coursing through me. I wanted to throw my gloves down and confront them both right then and there. But I didn't. Not yet. The morning after my sparring session, I woke up with my resolve solidified. The evidence I'd collected was undeniable, Amanda and Marcus were having an affair. But confrontation wasn't going to be enough. I wanted the truth, every detail, and I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal. I started the day by doing something I hadn't done in years. I called in sick to work. It wasn't much of a stretch, I'd barely slept the night before, and the dark circles under my eyes would have convinced anyone I was coming down with something. Amanda had already left for her yoga class by the time I dragged myself out of bed. I doubted she was actually going to yoga, but I didn't follow her this time. Instead, I went to the gym. "Hey, Ethan," Marcus called out when I walked in. He was holding court near the lockers, laughing with a few of the other guys. "You ready for some punishment today?" "Always," I said, forcing a smile. Inside, I was seething. For the next hour, I pushed myself harder than I ever had. Marcus, oblivious to my simmering anger, kept shouting his usual instructions: "Stay light on your feet. Keep that guard up." While Amanda's laughter echoed in my head. Finally, when I couldn't take it anymore, I decided to test him. "Marcus," I said, dropping my gloves and grabbing a towel. "Can I talk to you for a second?" "Sure," he said, looking curious. He followed me to a quieter corner of the gym, away from the other boxers. "I've been meaning to ask you something," I began, my tone casual. "Amanda's been spending a lot of time around here lately. You've noticed, right?" Marcus smirked. "Yeah, she's been showing a lot of interest. It's nice to see her supporting you like that." "Supporting me," I echoed, my voice flat. "That what you think this is?" He hesitated, his smirk faltering for just a second. "What are you getting at, Ethan?" I stared at him, searching for any crack in his facade. "I'm just wondering how close you two have gotten. She talks about you a lot, you know." His eyes narrowed slightly, but his tone remained light. "Well, I am her husband's coach. Comes with the territory." "Right," I said, nodding slowly. "Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page." I walked away before he could respond, leaving him standing there with a puzzled expression. Back at home, I reviewed the recordings from the devices I'd planted. The conversations were more explicit now, Amanda and Marcus speaking freely about their arrangements. When are we telling him? Amanda asked in one recording. Not yet, Marcus replied. I've got too much riding on this gym right now. We need to be smart about it. Smart about it. The words made my skin crawl. The next time I saw Jason, I laid it all out for him. Jesus, Ethan, he said, shaking his head. This guy's not just screwing your wife, he's playing you for a damn fool. Tell me something I don't know, I muttered, rubbing my temples. You've got enough to blow this wide open, Jason said. But if you really want to hit him where it hurts, you've got to do it in front of an audience. Take away his power. An idea began to take shape in my mind. A week later, I was back at the gym for another sparring session. This time, I made sure the place was packed. Marcus, I said loudly as I climbed into the ring. Let's go a few rounds. He raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? You're looking a little worn out, man. I can handle it, I said, my tone sharper than usual. The gym fell quiet as we squared off. It wasn't often that Marcus sparred with his clients, and the tension in the air was palpable. The first punch I threw landed squarely on his shoulder, harder than I'd intended. Marcus stumbled slightly, his grin slipping. Easy there, he said, adjusting his stance. Why? Can't take it. The second punch was aimed at his ribs, and this time, he winced. All right, Ethan, he said, his voice low. What's going on? What's going on? I repeated, my voice rising. That's a great question, Marcus. Why don't you tell me? The murmurs around the gym grew louder as I circled him, my gloves raised. You think I don't know what's been going on? I said, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. You think I'm that stupid? Marcus's eyes flickered with panic, but he kept his composure. Ethan, maybe we should talk about this privately. No, I said firmly. We're doing this here. In front of everyone. The fight escalated quickly. Marcus threw a punch, and I blocked it, countering with a jab that connected with his jaw. The crowd gasped, but I didn't care. All I could see was his smug face, his lies, his betrayal. When the fight finally ended, Marcus was on the floor, blood dripping from his nose. The gym was silent, everyone too stunned to speak. Now you know, I said, throwing my gloves down. This guy's not just a coach. He's a liar and a cheat. I stormed out of the gym, leaving Marcus and the crowd behind. When I walked through the front door that evening, my hands were still shaking. Part of it was the adrenaline from the fight, the rest was sheer fury. Amanda was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, completely unaware of what had just gone down at the gym. Hey, she said, looking up with a smile. You're home early. I dropped my bag on the floor and stood there, staring at her. For a moment, I thought about letting it go, pretending I didn't know, letting this twisted version of my life continue a little longer. But the rage inside me wouldn't let me. We need to talk, I said, my voice cold. Amanda frowned, setting her phone down. What's wrong? I sat across from her, leaning forward with my elbows on my knees. How long have you been sleeping with Marcus? Her face froze. For a split second, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then, just as quickly, she recovered. What the hell are you talking about? She said, her voice rising. Don't, I said, cutting her off. Don't lie to me. I know everything. Amanda's mouth opened and closed like she was trying to come up with a response. Finally, she settled on anger. Have you been spying on me? Is that what this is about? You've been going through my stuff. Don't try to turn this around on me, I snapped. I have proof, Amanda. The texts, the recordings, the receipts. Do you want me to go get them? Her face paled, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. Ethan, How long? I demanded, my voice louder now. How long has this been going on? She hesitated, then dropped her gaze to the floor. A few months, she said quietly. I laughed bitterly, running a hand through my hair. A few months. Unbelievable. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said, her voice trembling. It just did. Oh, spare me the clichés, I said, leaning back in my chair. You didn't mean for it to happen. That's your excuse. You've been sneaking around with my coach for months, lying to my face, and now you want me to believe this was some kind of accident. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Ethan. I never wanted to hurt you. Well, congratulations, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You did a hell of a job. The conversation spiraled from there. Amanda tried to explain herself, but every word out of her mouth felt like another stab to the chest. She talked about feeling neglected, about how I was always at the gym, about how Marcus made her feel seen. And I didn't. I said, my voice breaking. It wasn't like that, she said, shaking her head. I don't know. I was lonely. Lonely, I repeated, my voice flat. So instead of talking to me, you decided to have an affair? Amanda buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I didn't know what else to do. You could have left, I said, standing up. You could have told me you weren't happy. But instead, you chose to betray me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, staring at the darkened TV, my mind replaying every moment of the past few months. Every lie, every excuse, every look that now felt like a betrayal. By the time the sun came up, I'd made up my mind. I packed a bag that morning and told Amanda I was leaving. You're just going to walk away, she asked, her voice hoarse from crying all night. What else is there to do? I said, shrugging. You made your choice, Amanda. Now I'm making mine. She didn't try to stop me. Before I left town, I made one last stop at the gym. Marcus was there, sitting in his office with an ice pack pressed to his swollen nose. He looked up when I walked in, his expression a mix of anger and shame. What do you want, Ethan? I just came to say goodbye, I said, leaning against the doorframe. And to let you know that everyone in this gym knows what kind of man you really are. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Oh, and one more thing, I added, stepping closer. If you ever go near Amanda again, I'll finish what we started in the ring. I didn't wait for a response. By the time I got in my car and drove away, I felt a strange sense of relief. The life I'd known was over, shattered beyond repair. But in its place was something new, a blank slate, a chance to rebuild. And for the first time in months, I felt free. I spent the next few days in a small, no-frills motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place with flickering neon signs and peeling wallpaper. It wasn't much, but it was far away from Amanda, far enough for me to breathe. The first night, I didn't sleep. My mind wouldn't let me. I replayed everything, every moment of our marriage, every kiss, every fight, every red flag I should have noticed sooner. By the second night, I was less angry and more empty. The kind of hollow you feel when you realize the life you thought you were living was a lie. Jason stopped by the motel on the third day. He brought a six-pack of beer and a look of grim sympathy. So, he said, cracking open a can and handing it to me. How are you holding up? I shrugged, taking a long sip. I don't even know anymore. Jason leaned back in the rickety chair, studying me. You've got every right to be pissed, Ethan. But you can't let this eat you alive. What am I supposed to do? I said, gesturing around the tiny room. This is my life now. No, it's not, Jason said firmly. This is just a chapter. And chapters end. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready to think about the future yet. Later that night, I got a text from Amanda. Can we talk? Please. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to cut her out of my life completely. But another part, the part that still remembered the woman I'd fallen in love with, needed answers. Fine, I typed back, tomorrow. My place. When Amanda showed up the next afternoon, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Thanks for meeting me, she said softly. I didn't reply, motioning for her to sit down. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with all the things we weren't saying. Finally, Amanda broke it. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said, her voice trembling. But I need you to understand why this happened. Why? I said, my tone sharp. Because you were bored. Because Marcus made you feel seen. She flinched but didn't look away. Because I felt invisible, Ethan. Like I wasn't even a part of your life anymore. I laughed bitterly. And cheating on me fixed that? No, she said quickly. It didn't. It was a mistake, a horrible, selfish mistake. But it didn't come out of nowhere. We'd been drifting apart for years, and neither of us wanted to admit it. That's bull, I snapped. I loved you, Amanda. I still do, even after all of this. Her eyes filled with tears. I loved you too, Ethan. I still do. But love isn't enough if you don't feel like you're wanted. The conversation spiraled from there. We dredged up years of unresolved issues, fights we thought we'd moved past, wounds we thought had healed. I didn't do this to hurt you, Amanda said at one point, her voice barely above a whisper. I know that doesn't make it any better, but it's the truth. I shook my head, unable to look at her. You didn't do it to hurt me, but you did it anyway. That's what I can't get past. By the time Amanda left, I felt even more drained than before. But at least now, I had some clarity. This wasn't about me being a bad husband or Amanda being a bad wife. It was about two people who'd let their marriage fall apart without realizing it. But knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. That night, I went back to the gym. Marcus wasn't there, word had gotten around about our fight, and he'd been temporarily suspended, while the owners decided what to do with him. The gym felt quieter without him, less charged. As I worked the heavy bag, I felt some of my anger start to fade. Each punch felt like a release, like I was knocking loose the weight that had been dragging me down. When I finally stopped, I noticed someone watching me. It was Sarah, one of the trainers. We'd exchanged pleasantries before, but I'd never really paid much attention to her. You okay? She asked, handing me a water bottle. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. I think I will be. 2 months later, my life looked completely different. The divorce was underway, moving faster than I expected. Amanda and I agreed to keep things civil, no ugly court battles, no dragging out the process. We both knew our marriage was over, and clinging to the remnants would only make it worse. She moved out of the house and into a small apartment downtown. We spoke occasionally, mostly about logistics, splitting bank accounts, dividing furniture, sorting through old photos neither of us had the heart to throw away. It was painful, but it wasn't bitter. And that, in a way, made it even harder. At the gym, Marcus's absence was like a weight lifted off everyone's shoulders. He'd been fired a week after our fight, following a series of complaints from other clients, some of whom, it turned out, had their own stories about his inappropriate behavior. Apparently, Amanda wasn't the only one he'd charmed. The gym owners replaced him with a new coach, a retired boxer named Tony. He was gruff and no-nonsense, the kind of guy who didn't waste time on small talk. I liked him immediately. One night, after a particularly grueling session, Sarah caught me on my way out. Hey, Ethan, she said, her voice light but hesitant. You want to grab a coffee or something? My treat. I blinked, caught off guard. Sure. Yeah, why not? We ended up at a small cafe a few blocks from the gym, sitting in a corner booth and sipping overpriced lattes. I heard about what happened, Sarah said after a few minutes. With Marcus? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She nodded. And your wife? I tensed, unsure how much she knew. For what it's worth, she said, you handled it better than most people would've. I've seen guys go through this kind of thing before, and it usually doesn't end well. Thanks, I said, though the compliment felt hollow. I didn't really have a choice. What was I supposed to do, burn the place down? Sarah smiled. Some guys would have tried. Our conversation drifted to lighter topics, boxing, movies, her plans to open her own fitness studio someday. It was the most relaxed I'd felt in months, and for the first time, I realized how much I'd been isolating myself since the divorce started. As we said goodbye that night, Sarah gave me a warm smile. You're going to be okay, Ethan. You know that, right? For the first time, I believed her. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started picking up old hobbies, photography, hiking, even a little woodworking. Things I'd let fall by the wayside during my marriage. I also started spending more time with Jason, who was more than happy to drag me out to bars and introduce me to his group of friends. You're a free man now, he said one night over a round of beers. Time to start acting like it. One afternoon, as I was cleaning out the last of Amanda's belongings from the house, I found an old shoebox filled with mementos from our early days together, concert tickets, postcards, a Polaroid of us on our first anniversary. I sat there for a long time, holding the photo in my hands. We looked so happy, so full of hope. It was a reminder of what we'd had, and what we'd lost. I didn't cry, though. I didn't feel angry, either. I just felt, at peace. The final piece of closure came in the form of a phone call from Amanda. I just wanted to say thank you, she said. For what? I asked, genuinely surprised. For not hating me, she said. For letting me go without making it harder than it already was. I didn't know how to respond. I hope you find someone who makes you happy, she added. Someone who deserves you. Thanks, I said finally. I hope you do too. As I hung up, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly, but it was something close. A few weeks later, I found myself back at the cafe with Sarah. We laughed, talked, and even made plans to go hiking together the following weekend. It wasn't a grand romance or a whirlwind affair. It was something smaller, quieter. But it felt real. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking back. I was moving forward.